Hi everyone. We are going to go over today quickly, hopefully, a few things that occurred before and during the Industrial Revolution having to do with inventions, because there are some inventions during what they call the agricultural revolution, which happened right before the Industrial Revolution, that kind of had a huge impact on the beginning of the change into the Industrial Revolution. So we're going to talk about those briefly, and then we're also going to talk about some inventions that definitely helped the Industrial Revolution along. So we're going to talk about the before. So right before you have the industrialization of England, there's an agricultural revolution going on, there are some inventions that helped farming. And when you have a surplus of food because of the success of farming, you're going to have a population explosion. Okay, there's going to be healthier people, and especially during this time, you're getting new medicines and new medication that's going to help them become more healthy. But it all starts with the food. And we talked about a little bit about farming in class. So a major inventor during the agricultural revolution was Jethro Tull, and what he created was the seed drill. So before you had the seed drill, people were just throwing seeds on the land and hoping that they would grow. Whereas with the seed drill, which we're going to see a picture later on, the seed drill actually planted all those seeds right in a nice, neat row to ensure that they would actually grow and not be like starved by others' seeds being on top of them. Okay, so you're much more efficient this way in with your seeds and how you plant them, because you're going to have a much higher success rate. Okay, and then you also have this guy, Lord Charles Townshend, which came up with this idea of crop rotation. He was actually his nickname was Turnip Townsend, because turnips actually have some essential vitamins and minerals in them that actually helps replenish the soil. So he comes up with this 4-field crop rotation. And what that is that each field, you divide your land up into 4 fields, and each field would have a different crop. And then you would rotate turnips into that crop rotation, and then the next season you would put turnips in, and that would help replenish the soil. And then you'd rotate again your 4 crops, and you'd have turnips in one, and then, I don't know, corn, wheat, and then, what's another one? I don't know. Lettuce and another one. Not that they grew lettuce very often, but lettuce and another one. And then you would keep rotating, because actually each vegetable contributed to the soil replenishment in a certain way. So that way you're not just using a field one season and having it rest and not being utilized another season. You were constantly using your fields, which in turn created more food. Okay, and I know we already talked about enclosure, which is the fencing off of landowners' land, and they could divvy it up and make more money that way. So we won't spend a lot of time on that. And then you have Robert Bakewell, who is famous for coming up with ways to breed livestock to make them stronger and to make them better. Like you breed the strong cow with the strong bull or whatever, and they would end up having a strong calf. Okay, and by doing this, he's making meatier, bigger livestock to be sold. So you're getting more out of your animals. And then I'm just going to mention George III real quick, because he was a huge proponent of farming. I mean, the guy he was pretty crazy. Aside from that, he did some really weird stuff, but like he would run around in his pajamas. I don't really know, but he would he was a publisher, so he would publish many books on farming and the importance of farming, and he understood that in his kingdom that if you had a successful agricultural trade, then you would be a successful country. You'd have a lot of money. Okay, so those are a few examples of what kind of helped lead to the Industrial Revolution. You know, you've got this enclosure system, you've got improved living because of the food, and then you have people coming up with new ideas to improve things, and strong proponents of farming that kind of helps it progress, especially as a king. So these are just a couple pictures of what a few things are. So this is actually the seed drill right here, and you'd pour all the seeds in this bucket and then come down in rows, and this little thing would kind of like make a divot, or actually this would make a divot right here in the ground where your seeds could go. So that was the seed drill. And then over here is kind of an example of your 4-crop rotation. Oh, okay, clover, barley, wheat, no lettuce, and then your turnips. And then you could rotate that over and over again every year. An example of enclosure, Barton is the landowner's name, and this is what his his land looked like before the idea of enclosure. And this is what it looked like after, if you see all these tiny little divisions of him enclosing his lands and fencing off land. And then, of course, this kicks off a huge number of peasants, and all those peasants end up in the city as a part of that urban migration. This is an example of Robert Bakewell growing his stronger, meatier animals. And this is George III in the corner, the huge fan of farming and gardening. And then up in the corner, you look at these, the seed drill and this crop rotation and this enclosure, and this is a really good example of the benefit that it had. If you look at the key, the Great Britain and the Low Countries, which would be the Netherlands, which actually the agricultural revolution kind of started with the Low Countries, and Great Britain kind of stole their ideas. But if you look at the impact it actually had on them, it goes way, way up. And even in Central Europe and in Eastern Europe, the blue and green lines, you can see they're kind of cut off by the seed drill, but you can see they start to go up. I promise, they don't go back down. And then what's really interesting, if you look at France, Spain, and Italy, if you look at what happens during this time period later in the 1700s, there is a massive downturn. And we all know that that has to do with the French Revolution that's occurring in France. So they fall a little bit behind everybody else. Okay, so now let's move on to the new technology that actually affected the Industrial Revolution itself. Thomas Newcomen was an inventor who came up with the steam engine. We talked about coal and iron, and burning coal and forcing things to go forward. Actually, many inventions came out of the steam engine. If you think about the steam-powered locomotive right here by George Stephenson, this is the train. Okay, this is what it evolves into. And if you think about Robert Fulton, oops, that should be capitalized. He created a steamboat. Okay, to help with transportation. It made transportation much, much faster. You could get your goods out much, much faster. And then you've got inventions like the water frame, which was actually replaced by steam-powered machines eventually. But Richard Arkwright kind of starts out with this water frame, and this water frame is used to kind of run what's called the spinning jenny by James Hargreaves. And what the spinning jenny is, it's just this. It's like an old-fashioned sewing machine. It allows you to weave multiple threads all at the same time. Okay, so it makes your production that much faster. And then this actually evolves into a much bigger and much more efficient spinning machine that in the Industrial Revolution and people in factories are going to start using. Okay, so these are kind of just a brief synopsis of the different kinds of things that are coming out of the Industrial Revolution to help it grow and become more impactful. And these are just a few pictures. Like, this is the water frame. Okay, so this is like whatever you're doing, whether it's sewing, those are spindles, so it's sewing something. And this thing here, like this huge pole right here, goes right down below into the ground, and there's water down here. And you would have like a dam or something that you would open up, and that water pressure would spin this frame, which would make the machine go. Okay, and then that evolves into a steam engine. Okay, so this is run by steam now, and it's making the wheel move much faster. And also, you're kind of, if you think of the water frame, you're at the mercy of the water. If it's a drought or if there's no current, you're going to be in big trouble because your factory is not going to be able to open. It's not going to be able to produce anything. Okay? And then the evolution from the steam engine to a locomotive, to a moving locomotive. And that's what you have here, which turns into a huge train system where we can import and export many, many goods from factories, and even sending trains to the ports in order to put them on our steamboat, our steam engine ship, to transport them in other places. Okay? And then you also have, this is actually a picture of your spinning jenny. Okay? So this is your spinning jenny where it's using spools of thread to sew multiple things. And then this is what it evolves into. Okay, something like this. This would be run or powered by water or steam. Okay, and you can see all the different spindles right here. You're sewing many, many more. You've got all of them on the other side. The thing that's crazy about this is that during the Industrial Revolution, if you were good at your job, it's like you'd start out on one side and you'd have to make sure, constantly be checking these spindles and constantly changing them and making sure that there were no, you'd have to stick your fingers in here and make sure there were no catches or tangles or anything like that. And if you're really good at that job, then woohoo, you get the responsibility of being in charge of the other side too. So you're constantly running back and forth, checking spindles and checking to make sure that there's no threads being tangled. And this is where you're gonna, lose some fingers if it gets stuck. So pretty dangerous. Anyway, so those are a few inventions that kind of helped out the Industrial Revolution. We're going to do like a little activity, hopefully, about the a few more inventions, and these are the most significant ones, I guess, that we're going to talk about a little bit more. Okay, so that is a quick review. Oh my gosh, under 11 minutes. I'll stop right here, and I'll see you guys on the half day. Have a good night, and I will see you later. Bye.